All right, so now we can start. Now we can start. Is everybody ready? Okay. Welcome to Unchained Disciples Bible Study. We are on our series Seeking Wholeness, looking at emotional and mental health. We're on a lesson on boundaries. We're looking at boundaries in relationships today, boundaries in relationships. And I'll start off by reading Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. It says, "Behold, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be as wary as serpents and as innocent as doves." So some translate that as shrewd as serpents, as wise as serpents. So he's telling the disciples to be shrewd as serpents, but wary as doves. And so the word there, wise or shrewd or wary, is phronimos. It's the Greek word phronimos. And so it means wary, wise, shrewd, sensible, practically wise or sensible. And properly, it means how we size things up. It's reflecting on our personal opinions. So it's what you would consider savvy. So he's saying be savvy. It's the roots of our personal perspective, which regulates our definition of being shrewd. So he's basically telling them, go out in the world, but you need to be shrewd as serpents, but innocent as doves. So be innocent as doves. So expect the best from people. Expect the best, but be wise as serpents. I heard there's an expression that says, trust everybody, but cut the cards. Trust everybody, but cut the cards. And that's alluding to when you're playing the card game, the person shuffles the deck, and before they deal, you have the option to cut the cards. And the reason they do that is so that the person didn't set up the deck where a card was in a certain place. But so some people say, oh, well, I trust you, I don't need to cut it. So, but the saying, trust everybody, cut the card, says, trust everybody, give them your trust, don't expect the worst, but still play by the rules. If there are rules set up to protect you, still play by the rules. Trust them, but still play by the rules. And so one of the things we can do to protect ourselves is to have boundaries. Boundaries are an effective tool for achieving this goal, along with having the armor of God, the word, the truth, the breastplate of righteousness. So those things protect us, but boundaries also protect us, and also following the Holy Spirit protects us. So we're looking today at boundaries. And if you don't have boundaries, if you don't have proper boundaries, what does that look like in a relationship? So in a relationship, if you don't have proper boundaries, you may feel unsafe or disempowered in a relationship, or you may be hyper vigilant or anxious about everything. You're always walking on eggshells when you're around a person because you don't know when they're going to blow up, or you don't want to upset them when you don't have boundaries. Or you may have a hard time identifying how you feel because you're basically letting the other person tell you how you feel. Or maybe you stop trying to think for yourself. Or you feel hopeless and depressed. Or the other person is all in your business that they shouldn't be in, and they're all in your physical belongings and your property when you don't have proper boundaries. So if you haven't communicated your thoughts, wants, and need, people won't take them into consideration. So having boundaries is about communicating your thoughts, wants, and needs in a relationship. And if you don't communicate them, then you'll find people won't be paying attention to you, and they may ignore your needs because you haven't ever communicated them. But there's the opposite side of some people have overaggressive boundaries. Some people have overaggressive boundaries, and they're just, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, and they want other people to do everything. And if you have overaggressive boundaries, then the other person feels like they're being bullied. Like maybe you have a roommate that says, I'm not going to do any cleaning or do any dishes, whether they're mine or yours. They have boundaries, but they're over-aggressive boundaries. They're not just for protection. They're basically taking advantage of you. So there's another side of boundaries that, people can take it too far and take it to be too selfish as well. But we want to have boundaries. And so today in this lesson, we're going to be talking about relationships. We're going to be going deep. It will be applicable to everyone. You know, Pastor Brian used to say that, don't worry, soon I'll come and I'll put my feet up on your coffee table, when he was talking high level at some point. But he said, okay, I'm going to come. So that today we'll get the feet up on your coffee table, and you'll get the dirt from the shoes on your coffee table even today. All right. And so I will review. So Seeking Wholeness is the series we're looking at. And we've defined some traits of wholeness that we're striving for. So we say in order to be whole, these are the traits that we're striving for. And I'll read them off today. And as we go through the lesson today, if you hear something that you think we might want to add to the list, you can mention that. But so it's traits of wholeness. So wholeness is about being spiritually, emotionally, and mentally healthy. It's dealing with life's current stresses and also dealing with situations from the past that you may not have healed from, or wounds that you've experienced in the past that you haven't healed from. So we're addressing those because Jesus didn't just promise us eternal life. He promised us joy and peace and patience and self-control. And not every Christian is experiencing that. And so wholeness is a step to achieving that. So some of the traits of wholeness that we've defined are, number one, authenticity. Authenticity. We want to be authentic. Honesty. We want to be honest. Kindness. Not seeking external validation and approval. Living by values and principles. Setting boundaries, which we'll be talking about today. Taking ownership of your responsibilities. Living with purpose and passion. Optimism. Confidence. Healthy relationships with other people. Not losing control of your emotions, being free from addictions, addressing conflict, vulnerability, being able to open up and express your emotions to people, not being critical or judgmental of others, not being jealous of others, forgiving those who've wronged you in the past, knowing that you're worthy of receiving love from God and love from other people. Not being afraid to fail, being able to manage your irrational fear, worry, or anxiety, selfless encounters with others, not manipulating others, trying to control their actions and reactions. You care about how other people feel. 25 is patience. You don't give in to peer and social pressure. You can communicate directly. You don't take responsibility for other people's emotions, but you do take responsibility for your emotions. And then finally, being led by the Spirit. So those are the traits that we're striving for. It may be a lifelong journey, but those are the traits that we're striving for. All right. So that's the introduction. Any thoughts so far? Okay. So as an outline, what we're going to be covering today, that's the introduction, and then we'll be talking we had the traits of wholeness. Next, we'll do a review of boundaries. Then we'll give an example of boundaries in this class. Discuss why is it hard to set boundaries, and then we'll start to list through some of the boundaries to have in relationships. So boundary review. What is a boundary? What is a boundary? Boundary is a personal property line that marks those things for which we're responsible. In other words, boundaries define who we are and who we are not. Boundaries impact all areas of our lives. Physical boundaries help us determine who may touch us and under what circumstances. Mental boundaries give us freedom to have our own thoughts and opinions. Emotional boundaries help us deal with our own emotions and disengage from harmful, manipulative emotions of others. Spiritual boundaries help us distinguish God's will from our own and give us a renewed awe for our Creator. That's from the Boundaries book by Cloud and Townsend. A boundary is a guideline, it's a rule, it's a limit. It states this is what I'm okay with and this is what I'm not okay with. So when we practice boundaries, we take ownership of our thoughts, our feelings, our bodies, and our decisions. Boundaries help us determine what I'm responsible for and what I'm not responsible for in a relationship. So we're not responsible for the other person's wants, and we're not responsible, but we are responsible for our own limits, the limits that we set. And boundaries have consequences. So the goal of boundaries setting isn't to get the other person to behave differently, but it's to get us to be different. It's not a manipulation tactic, but they provide protection so that we can be vulnerable, so we can be ourselves and feel safe in a relationship and open up and be vulnerable. It allows us to let our guard down because we have the boundaries in place. And so I talked about it's not a manipulation tactic and mentioned manipulation. So a definition of manipulation is it's a psychological manipulation is a type of social influence that aims to change the behavior or perception of others through indirect, deceptive, or underhanded tactics. By advancing the interests of the manipulator, often at another's expense, such methods could be considered exploitative or devious. So it's indirectly trying to change somebody's behavior. So with boundaries, we want to be direct and clear about what we want. Okay. And we talked about, so this is continuing the review, we talked about hard and soft boundaries. So some boundaries are hard that you won't, and some boundaries may be soft. And so we saw examples of that with Jesus. The Canaanite woman wanted her daughter healed. And Jesus said, I've come for the tribe of Israel. I didn't come for the Canaanites. But then when he saw how much faith he had, he went ahead and healed her daughter. And another example, when Jesus was asked to turn the water into wine, he told his mother, woman, it's not my time yet. It wasn't his time to do any miracles yet. But since his mother insisted, he went ahead and did it. So that was a soft boundary. He went ahead and started displaying his miracles publicly. But Jesus also had hard boundaries. We saw that in Matthew 21 when he drove the money changers out of the temple. We saw that in Luke 5 and many other places when a crowd was there, but Jesus went away to pray. People wanted to talk to him. People wanted him to speak. People wanted healing, but he went away and left to go be alone to pray. And we saw that at the pool of Bethesda. There were many there wanting to be healed, but Jesus just healed one person. And then we talked about how to set boundaries. The first thing when we set boundaries is self-assessment. Ask yourself, am I aware of when I'm being controlled by others? Am I aware that I am being violated? Am I aware of my early warning signals? Then we said to assess the situation that you're in. How are you feeling about the situation and why? What do I wish could be different? And then ask yourself, am I being selfish? Am I being selfish, or is this really a boundary that I need to set? And pray about it. James 1:5 tells us, if anyone lacks wisdom, ask God, and it will be given to you. Then you want to establish what you want. So get concrete in your mind what it is that you want. You can't set a boundary until you're clear on what you want. And then define the boundary. When you're defining the boundary, remember that you're responsible for your thoughts, your feelings, your body, your decisions, but no one else's. So you aren't responsible for anyone else's thoughts, feelings, body, or their decisions, just your own. And you want to establish the consequences. So you want to prayerfully establish them ahead of time and not come up with them at the moment. At the moment, if someone says they won't follow the boundary. So you want to decide what the consequences of it is. Then you want to communicate the boundary to the person. Be clear and direct when you communicate it. Express it with logic rather than emotion. Express it with I statements. I feel demeaned or shut down when you yell at me. Instead of saying you never, you always, you this. So it's not about a judgmental statement. You're using I statements and saying, how you feel and the boundary you have set. It's not about giving a judgment on the other person. And you want to anticipate that there may be resistance. It may cause someone to draw back. It may cause tension. It may cause conflict. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't set the boundary. And then you also want to seek counsel. Seek counsel. Let's see. Who has Proverbs 12:15?
I have that, Mike.
All right.
The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearkeneth unto counsel is wise.
Right. So you want to take counsel. Make sure you may want to talk to other wise people to make sure that it's a valid boundary that you're setting. And then you also want to get support to help you through this, because it could impact your relationships. I mean, you don't want to, and this is something you do over time. You don't want to just go gung-ho and start setting boundaries in all your relationships and blow out all your relationships at once. And then we talked about the fact that obedience to God is the ultimate boundary. If God said it, then that is the boundary that we have. Let's see, Angel, yeah, Galatians 1:10.
Was that on mine?
Oh, who was that?
Sorry, it was me. The way I was muted. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice.
Oh, Galatians 1:10? Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
Did I read the wrong thing?
Oh, Chris had the Proverbs 12:15.
Oh, sorry. I messed up. I went to copy and it copied the one above it. It didn't copy that one. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
Galatians 1:10. Galatians 1:10. So very sorry.
Oh, no worries.
1:10. Am I trying to win the approval of human beings or of God, or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ.
Right. So if we're trying to please people, we won't be a servant of Christ. So ultimately, we're trying to please God. So the directions, instructions from God, inclinations of the Holy Spirit are our ultimate boundary. So that's the review of what we've covered so far. It's a review of what we covered so far. Any comments? Any comments on those so far? No? Okay. So we will start the lesson for today. So let's see. So I guess as an example of the boundary, so there, I guess I'll express. So we have boundaries in this class. There are boundaries. I don't know if they were being communicated, but so I present the lesson. You are welcome to comment, to, as you all know, to even to disagree. You can disagree if you want, if you have verses to support it or not. You would comment or disagree, but the boundary is that we won't continue. So you can disagree, but we won't continue until you feel like you've convinced me or convinced everybody in the class. So you can disagree, but we may have to move on, where we may not come to an agreement on it. All right. And why is it hard to set boundaries? Why is it? Well, why do you guys think it's hard for some people to set boundaries?
Here.
I think sometimes people are afraid of hurting people's feelings.
Yeah.
They're afraid of losing the person's love.
Mm.
Like, in the case of a child, you know that they're supposed to be doing their homework. The child might seem to see it as the adult or the parent being too harsh. And sometimes they will try to seek a friendship. So those kind of barriers, or in a relationship where, for example, there's a divorce, you see a dad that has the custody, or the mom trying to let the kid to do whatever they want, but they don't want to lose their friendship. So fear of losing that relationship.
Yeah, parents don't want to be friends instead of parents.
Exactly.
Yeah. Were you gonna say something, Angel?
Sometimes it's fear, like he was just saying, it could be fear of losing a relationship.
Right.
Fear that there's going to be pushback, or you're going to make the other person angry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I say fear of the rejection.
Yeah, fear of rejection. Yeah, fear of rejection. So people.
And the reaction.
Yeah, fear of the other person's response. So
Yes,
fear of rejection, fear of the other person's response. It could also be a need for approval. They feel they may lose the approval of the other person, or maybe they've had internalized messages. They feel that they're not okay. So they feel that, okay, I must be. They feel that they're not okay. So it's like, okay, well, maybe I must be wrong. If the person is doing this, then I must be wrong. Or maybe they've had bad experience trying to be assertive before. They spoke up in a relationship and the person left them, or they spoke up at work and they got written up, or coworkers got mad at them. Or another reason may be cultural differences. In some cultures, you can't talk back to elders, or in some cultures, the woman can't talk back to the man, or so there may be cultural differences where someone is afraid to set boundaries. And then also there could be low self-esteem. Low self-esteem, which doesn't allow you to set boundaries.
Something else, another thing could be someone trying to fit in the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Someone trying to fit in. They just want to fit in. They don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately my screen share isn't working today, so these videos aren't going to work too well. But anyway, I'll play the audio. So here's one short clip of someone talking on something related about boundaries. Story, I'll play that. Oh.
Food or any other resources. If you imagine owning a desert with no water, no food, or any other resources. If you lived there, how willing would you be to put up a fence to protect yourself? You wouldn't be willing to do so at all. You'd either want to leave or build a paved road and welcome everyone to come join you to get the benefit of their resources. Now, imagine owning a farm with silos full of grain and pastures full of cows. It would make perfect sense for you to put up a fence to take care of what you have so that no one could harm it or take it away without your permission. This is why the ability to stand up for yourself is inextricably linked with your ability to create, care for yourself, and live abundantly. You can't set boundaries without internal abundance. Because if you believe there is nothing of value inside of you, then it's in your best interest to do whatever anyone tells you to do and open yourself up in ways that are harmful just to get whatever scrap of abundance they might be willing to offer in return for your compliance. You have to believe there is something of value within you in order to stand up and say no when you know you should. Imagine owning it.
Mm-hmm. So as an example of if you're on the desert, you have a piece of desert in the sand and you have no food, you aren't going to mind if people come. You may actually welcome people to come because maybe they'll have some food. But if you have, a rich land full of everything, then you may try to fence it off. If you're wealthier than everyone else, then you're gonna have fences. You're gonna have an alarm because you're worried that someone will take it. And so he's saying it's the same thing with boundaries. If you don't feel you have anything of value, then you don't feel like there's anything you need to protect. So your self-worth, how you view yourself, plays a role in your ability to set boundaries. If you have low self-esteem and you feel that you're worthless, then you don't feel the need to put up boundaries or protect yourself because you don't want to keep other people out. But if you feel, that you are valuable, then you'll put up boundaries to protect yourself.
I add one more thing to that, Michael.
Yes.
I think something else with boundaries is sometimes you don't realize, I think especially like when I was younger, you don't realize that boundaries are healthy and that, we're taught as Christians to put other people's needs above our own.
Right.
And so you kind of go with the flow and figure, if you're putting everybody else's needs above your own and you're not saying, oh, I can't do that, or, unless it's something really egregious, then you kind of feel, or I had felt at one point, I was doing the Christian thing by not making waves or not saying, no, I don't think this is good, or does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. It's the Christian thing to do, to be selfless and to give to other people, and so we see ourselves to be a good person, that we shouldn't put up boundaries, that we shouldn't limit what we do for other people, we shouldn't limit what we give other people, we shouldn't limit what we allow other people to take from us. And that is true, in that. So we talked about the fact that a boundary is necessary. So if you're giving and you're loving and you're selfless and you're giving because you want to give, then that's fine. But if it's a situation where you're giving when you don't want to give, when you're feeling like you have to, it's like you don't really want to be doing it. You're not doing it because you're a loving person. You're doing it to look good. You're doing it so they don't reject you. You're doing it for some other reason. You're not doing it out of the kindness of your heart. You're not doing it out of love. You're doing it out of fear. So that's when it's an issue. If you're doing it out of love, it's like, hey, this guy, every time we go out, I pay for him. But it's my 5-year-old son. It's like, well, yeah, you're supposed to. It's like, that's your, if it's your responsibility, or if you're doing it out of love, then it's fine. But, if you have, a friend who's not in need, but yet every time you guys go out to eat, they expect you to pay for them, then you may need to set it. And you're feeling used. You're feeling, if you want to do it, some people are generous. If you're generous, then hey, that's fine. But if you're feeling used and it's not your responsibility and it's not really reasonable, then you need a boundary. If it's not reasonable but you want to do it, then you don't need a boundary. If you're doing it out of love, out of giving. So that's a good point. And as a Christian, we should be expanding to want to do more stuff out of love. But there are limits. And that the problem is, as a Christian, we often, some people, that can also lead you to get where you're being manipulated and used by others. Some people must say, hey, you're a Christian, you should be, you should pay my rent this week. It's like, oh, I just met you last week. Why? You're like, oh, well, you should be a good Christian. Jesus would have paid my rent. And so we want to, so there are situations where we set limits. So yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point that we talked about in the previous ones, but definitely should be mentioned here. All right. So now we're going to look at boundaries in relationships. Boundaries in relationships. Setting boundaries in relationships is about what treatment are you willing to accept and what treatment are you not willing to accept. So boundaries is about, there are some things that you aren't okay with, but you haven't communicated, or maybe you have. So it's about communicating those things that you aren't okay with. So what you are and what you aren't okay with. And so your boundaries will be different for different people. What boundaries you have for your family may be different than the boundaries you have for your coworkers, may be different from somebody you're in a romantic relationship with. You're going to have different boundaries based on the relationship with that person. And so these boundaries aren't just talking about romantic relationship. We're talking about friendships. We're talking about family. We're talking about coworkers. We're talking about any types of relationships that you may have. You may need boundaries. And so first we'll talk about some traits for healthy and unhealthy relationship. What are some traits for healthy and unhealthy relationships? So one trait of a healthy relationship is trust. You trust the other person versus being suspicious. You're suspicious of them, or you're jealous. You're jealous of them. That's an unhealthy trait. Another healthy trait is honesty. You can honestly tell the truth to the person versus an unhealthy trait of game playing or trying to manipulate. You're trying to, get person to do things, but not telling them honestly, or you're hiding things. Another healthy trait is self-esteem or security in a relationship. The unhealthy side of that is you need your partner to provide validation. A healthy trait is respecting the difference of others, respecting the difference of the other person. So you're going to be two different people, and that person may be different than you in some ways. And so respecting that difference is a healthy trait. An unhealthy trait is you're trying to change that person, A healthy trait is, obviously there's not 100% if they're an alcoholic and you're trying to change them. That's not necessarily an unhealthy trait, but in general. So a healthy trait is willingness to help without needing to rescue or make yourself indispensable. So you're willing to help somebody, but you're not trying to rescue them or trying to make it so they depend on you. An unhealthy trait is when you feel that the other person is taking advantage of you. So it becomes unhealthy when you feel like they're taking advantage of you. A healthy trait is independence. An unhealthy trait is dependence. A healthy trait is you take responsibility, personal responsibility for things. An unhealthy trait is you blame the other person for everything. A healthy trait is you pay attention to the person. Unhealthy trait is you're disengaged, you're apathetic, you don't really care about the other person. And then the final healthy trait is there's balance and reciprocity in a relationship. There's give and take. You do something, they do something, there's reciprocity. Where unhealthy trait is one person is demanding all the time or one person is giving all the time. So those are some healthy and unhealthy traits in relationships. Let's see, any thoughts on those so far? All right, so now we'll get to the areas of boundaries. So the first area that you want to have boundaries is your feelings. You want to have boundaries in your feelings. Who has Proverbs 14:10?
I do.
Okay.
It says, "The heart knows its own bitterness, and no stranger shares its joy."
Right. So your heart knows its own bitterness. Someone else can't share that bitterness, and someone else can't share your joy. So you have your own feelings. So in a relationship, you have your feelings, and that person has their feelings. So your feelings are your responsibility, and you have to own them. And you shouldn't take responsibility for the other person's feelings. So a lot of times in responsibility or in relationships, we may take responsibility for the other person's feeling, or someone may feel that, okay, I want to find someone who's going to make me happy. It's not their responsibility to make you happy. Happiness is your feeling. It's not their responsibility. If you had a bad day, it's not their responsibility to entertain you and make you have a good day. Your feelings are your responsibility. So you shouldn't expect someone else to take responsibility for your feelings. And in the same token, you shouldn't minimize someone else's feelings. So you shouldn't tell them how they feel. If someone is mad, you shouldn't tell them, oh, you shouldn't be mad at that. Oh, that was just a small thing. You shouldn't be mad. That's their feelings. You know, they have a right. You don't have a right to tell them how they should feel about something. So we own our own feelings, and we shouldn't take responsibility or expect to be able to control the other person's feeling. So that was something I used to be doing in a relationship. I would take responsibility for the other person's feeling. You know, I would try to make, if they were having a bad day, I'd go overboard to try to make them happy. But then I found that that could lead to manipulation. You know, if for instance they thought I wasn't spending enough time with them, then all they would have to do was be mad or be upset or something, and then I'd be going overboard. Oh, then now I'd call them and try to fix it or text them more often, and so you was open myself up to manipulation. And then and if guys, if a woman cries, then the guy is like, oh, it's all over. He's open. He's trying to wants to do everything. And so if you take ownership of the other person's feelings, it's not a good thing. It can lead to manipulation, but it also just leads to not a good state, because the other person should take responsibility for their own emotion. You're two independent people, and that's part of your boundaries. That's part of what defines you. Your feelings, your emotions, they're yours. They're not somebody else's. It's not your responsibility to control someone else's emotions. It's not your responsibility to tell someone how they should feel. It's like, oh, you shouldn't be mad about that. You shouldn't be sad at that. It's not your responsibility to tell them how they should feel, and it's not someone else's responsibility to change how you feel. So feelings is the first area of boundaries. Any thoughts on feelings? Boundaries of feelings. No? Okay. We'll go to the next one. The next area of boundaries is your joy. Your joy. So that's, I guess, a specific feeling. But you have a boundary around your joy. A lot of times we interact with, for instance, negative people. Or there's some people that whenever you interact with them, you just leave down and depressed. You leave feeling worse than when you saw them. It's like they always bring you down. There's some people that are always negative. They always have issues. They always have drama. They always want to talk about politics, or always talk about COVID, or they always want to talk about Trump, or they always want to talk about this conspiracy, or but it's always negative. It's always something negative. They always have something negative, and you always leave feeling worse than when you came. So we're all going to be down at some points, and we want to be able to express that to people and people to be supportive of it. But if you've been down for like 3 years and every conversation you've had is negative, then that's a problem. Then, so you want to have a boundary around your joy. So if someone is taking your joy, then you may need to limit that interaction, or you may need to express a boundary about it, or express that you like to talk about positive things sometimes, or set some boundary around that. There's some people that, I remember this one woman in the singles group. She was telling how she was in a relationship with her husband. He was sort of abusive, and she did everything for him, and it was like, first time she told me, it was like, oh, well, that's really sad, and how she felt that she needed to do everything, and then I'd see her the next month, and she'd come back with the same story. Oh, I was in this, and then I over here, and so after and being in this group for a few years, it's like I heard this same story about 20 times. It's 5-6 times to myself. It's like, how can you not remember you've told me this? And heard it like every conversation. that's pretty much all she has to say. And so it's like, okay, it's like, okay, I understand it, I empathize with you, but is there anything else that you can talk about? Is there anything else? So you may have to set a boundary. So you may have to set boundaries around your joy. You may have to limit the interactions with some people. Some people, you know when they call you, it's going to be negative. You know it's going to be gossip. You know it's going to be something negative, and so you may set a boundary around. Okay, I'm not going to read this email at this time, or I'm not going to, because this person, whatever this person says, I know it's going to bring me down, or I know it's going to make me anxious, or I know it's going to, it's going to impact your feeling a certain way. So you may have set boundaries around your interaction. Welcome, Annabelle. Welcome, Annabelle. And then, so boundaries about your joy. And there are also situations where one person may not want the other person to be joyous. So a question for you guys. So if you're in a relationship, so say a romantic relationship, and the other person is having fun somewhere and you're not, maybe you're at home just watching TV and they're out with their friends having fun, does that make you unhappy? Anybody?
I don't think so. I mean, other people, your fun may not be the definition of their fun, That doesn't mean that you're unhappy. You just went to an event that some found fun and you didn't. That doesn't mean that you are feeling unhappy.
Right, right.
Maybe bored or, anxious to get out of there. But not necessarily unhappy. That's
right. So it's one thing to feel unhappy. So go ahead, Silva. Oh, you're on mute.
So it could be an arrangement between two people. That's how they find their own joy. If you don't want to go watch movies and your wife likes to watch movies, I mean, it's a blessing that our girlfriends are willing to, get them out. You can watch your game. So it just depends on something deeper than joy.
Right.
If it's a matter of people preferences about fun, once you guys agree respectfully, that's what makes everybody happy. I mean, you don't want anybody messing with your remote control when there's a big game going on. So you can actually give them extra money to stay there and go to dinner afterwards. Happy, you're happy. So I don't think that applies to that kind of a joy. But there's a relationship where you have two people going out, and the other person is kind of a personality trait. They actually feel happy when there's chaos. That's where they get their joy.
Yeah.
Have a relationship where it has to be panic. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
Trying to solve it creates more tension. You just want it. So when they walk into the room, there has to be some kind of a chaos. That's what gives them joy. But it's kind of negative when you look at it, but that's how they drive their own joy. Almost like stepping into a pressure cooker. That's their personality. So in a relationship, if you meet that person, sometimes people are drawn to certain things that makes them happy. So, but if it's not what you want, when you let some people know how you feel or you have boundaries, it kind of gives you a sense of, being in control. And sometimes it might even resolve what's going on between you, the two of you. Because somebody that doesn't have the ability to have a boundary, sometimes you're actually part of the problem. The person wants you to establish a boundary. And when you establish that boundary by, vocalizing it or, in a peaceful conversation, I don't want you doing this. They might not even be aware that they're doing those things that's creating all this tension. So it kind of gives you kind of an empowerment when you when you speak of it and the person respects you, sometimes they don't keep a boundary because you didn't want to set up the boundary.
Right.
When you set up that boundary, they actually respect you more for drawing that boundary. And then it gets better from there. So it just depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen a situation where there's some people that they thrive on chaos, and it's because if you grew up in a family, in a household where there was always chaos, so whatever kind of household you grew up in, if you had your parents there, what their relationship was like is what you view as love now. So if you saw abuse, now subconsciously you think, well, that's what's normal in a relationship. So if there was always chaos, then that's what they feel comfortable. They feel comfortable when there's chaos. So they're always going to try to cause some chaos. And I remember one person I dated, she actually told me the story of like her ex-boyfriend that she was she had left her makeup bag at his house. He had a boundary where he didn't want her to contact him while he was at work, or he didn't want her to contact him with drama while he was at work. And so she had left her makeup bag at his place, and she said she remembers she was driving from home and she was just thinking, oh, I'm gonna call him, I'm gonna tell him how I need it, and she was like, I'm just gonna, and like she was just like planning drama. So she called him and was like, oh, I need it right away. And she didn't. She was just like, she just wanted to cause drama. She's like, I need it. You know, he was at work. She's like, he said, I need it. He's like, oh, I got an important meeting. I got to go. She's like, no, I need that makeup bag. I need it right away. I need you to leave. And she just intentionally was doing it just to cause drama, because that she got enjoyment out of it. She got enjoyment out of it. So there are people that get joy out of causing chaos and causing drama. And there are the people that if you're having a good time, they want to try to make you not have a good time. They don't want you to have a good time. They'll oh, I'm just sitting at home and you're out having fun, which make you feel guilty. They want to make you feel guilty about doing anything without them or doing this. So there's some people that don't want you to have joy without them or happiness without them. Were you going to say something, Lorraine?
I was gonna.
She was like last week.
I'm trying to think what I was gonna say. What was the question? I forget.
I think the first question was about if your mate is having fun.
Oh yeah. So I was gonna say that I think that if you're in a relationship and let's say you are a introvert, for introverts, they're happy that their significant other's gone away and they're out having fun with their friends or whatever.
Yeah.
But as long as they know what they're doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You call up and go, hey, I'm going to go out with my friends. I'll be here with so-and-so, Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? Then that's cool. But I think that if you don't know and you find out later that it happened, that's probably some boundary that you need to set up. Like, hey, if you're going to be going somewhere, let me know.
Meaning that somewhere that because you could have went, or just so you're saying if they went somewhere and it was fun and you didn't know, or if they went somewhere anywhere.
Just went anywhere, it doesn't matter. As long as you know, I think it's fine. As long as both parties know where each other is, I think you're good.
Yeah, I think that depending on, and the amount of that depends on, I guess, the level of your relationship. I mean, you don't want to have to report, okay, I'm going to lunch with coworkers, I'm leaving now. Okay, we got to the restaurant now. Okay, I'm back at my desk now.
No, I'm not talking like lunch during the week, like you're going with your coworkers. I'm just talking like after hours, like catching a drink, or I'm going to dinner and dancing with my coworkers afterwards, and you've maybe stayed home and fixed dinner for the both of you, and you're waiting and waiting, nobody's coming home. That's what I was saying.
Oh, well,
like,
yeah, that's a different
like,
story.
hey, if I'm used to you coming home,
Oh,
then,
okay,
you know,
okay.
that's what it,
Right.
So there's
Yeah,
boundaries
yeah,
of
yes.
like, hey, just check in if something different
Right.
than the normal is, you know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think introverts would be like, yeah, go away, go play with your friends.
But yeah, to communicate if there's a change, if there's, but I guess it's also communication. I guess if it happens, to communicate, what the expectation is. So maybe the first a couple of times, maybe you never talked about it and it wasn't clear. So it would be good to make it clear of what the expectation is. You know, you usually, or maybe, because maybe one person sees something as a pattern, the other person doesn't necessarily see it as a pattern. They just, so that's where.
See, I think the other thing too is usually when both are extroverts and they're like, and it's healthy to have your own friends besides your friends together. You know what I mean? Usually, if a guy goes, "Hey, I'm going to go to a football game with my bros, my friends," then the girl would be like, "Cool, then I'm going to the spa with my girls," or something, you know. So it kind of works out well that way. But anyways, I think I'm getting off the subject.
No, that's good. I mean, that's boundaries is the subject, so that's good.
There's your healthy boundaries.
All right. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. So next boundary is don't make offers that you hope will be declined. Who has 2 Corinthians 9:7?
Average.
Okay.
So it says that each one must do just as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, because love's a careful giver.
So that specifically is talking about tithing, but we can apply it also in that don't do something reluctantly or out of compulsion. Do it out of cheer. So one area is offering to do something that you hope the other person will decline. Like offering to help something, or offering to do something, or offering to help move, but you hope that the other person will say no. And then you get bitter and angry at the person when they say, sure. You're like, oh, why did they say, now you're angry at the person for saying yes. So you shouldn't be offering if you don't want to do it. Because sometimes we may offer to do something, but we're secretly hoping they'll say no. We want to come across as if we're generous, come across as a loving person. We want to give the impression that we are. And so we're offering, but yet we don't really want to do it. So you need to ask yourself, am I trying to look like a good person, making it seem like I want to do things that I don't want to do? Or are you trying to make it seem like you want to do things that you don't want to do? And so we don't want to make offers. And sometimes that may be a result of the other person trying to manipulate or make suggestions. Like maybe they say, well, I guess I'll wash my car this weekend, even though you're really good at it. You're better than me, and you could do it a lot faster than I could. So sometimes people will try to manipulate you into doing something, and then you offer out of guilt. So sometimes you're offering out of guilt. Someone makes you feel guilty and makes you feel like you're being selfish, or makes you feel like you're not giving, and so you offer to do it. And then there's other times you just offer with no suggestion. So we want to be authentic. You want to be authentic. If you're gonna secretly resent the other person, then don't offer. especially if they didn't ask. If someone asked, that's a different. So this is saying, don't just offer it up if you didn't want to do it, just to appear nicer than you really are. But the other side of that, though, is that doesn't mean that if it's something that is your responsibility, then you should be, if someone is doing something that you should be doing, then you do want to offer to do it. If someone is doing something that's really your responsibility, then, someone else is cleaning your house every weekend, and you should offer to do it, or someone is, I don't know what someone may be off, but if they're doing something and you feel guilty, like you might be taking advantage of them, I'm not saying don't offer then. If it's your responsibility, then you can offer. But if it's something that's not your responsibility, then, and you don't want to do it, then don't offer. And the common situation we see this is when you go out to eat, and the bill comes, and you see people like this. So they wait, somebody reaches for the bill, then the other person is like, oh, it's like, oh, you want me to get it? And if the other person says yeah, they're like, oh man, why? I can't believe this cheap person wants me. Like, well, wait a minute, you offered. So if you offer to do something, don't get mad at the other person, but don't offer to do things. And any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on that? Okay.
Always go Dutch.
Always go Dutch. Or communicate it. I mean, that's going to happen, but.
Actually, I think usually me and my friends are usually fighting to pay the bill. So.
That's what happens. We fight, but so if you're fighting and if you win the fight, don't get mad. If you're fighting to pay the bill and you win the fight, don't get mad. You're like, I paid for it last time. It's like, well, why were you fighting?
We get sneaky. Now we like go talk to the waiter like behind the curtain and slip them our card.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah. If you want to do it, then it's all fine. It's all love. The more, the better. The more generous you want to be, the better. Another situation you see this is threatening to break up. Some people will threaten to break up in a relationship one reason would be so the other person to see if the other person will fight to keep them. Has anybody ever seen this or done this? Okay, we got one honest person. Yeah, so it's threatening to break up. So it's not. So it's you're threatening something that you don't want to do. So that's a type of manipulation. I remember having a girlfriend once, and I got laid off. I lost my job, and I remember I was at her place. We were talking about it, and like later that day, she told me she wanted to break up, and I was like, "You want to break up?" And nothing previously gave me any inclination to she want to break up. So then I was like, well, I got this now. I don't have a job. I don't need any extra drama with this, because she was kind of dramatic. I was like, well, maybe that'll be for the better. Maybe we should break up. And then, next thing I know, she's crying and said, no, let's not break up. No, let's not break up. So it was like manipulating. I'm not exactly sure what it was manipulating me to, what it was manipulating me to do, but But it was a type of manipulation, just breaking up to, I guess, maybe she was gonna have some demands to get back because she thought I was in a vulnerable spot where I was gonna beg her not to leave me, and that she was gonna be able to have some demands, but it didn't quite work out that way. So don't threaten to break up if you don't want to break up.
Unless you want to learn a lesson like I did.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Life is about growth, and it doesn't matter what you experience. It's about, did you learn something from it?
Mm.
You know, I had a relationship where someone that was chaotic.
Mm.
My presence has always been able to come down. At some point, because it's not a natural character for the person. At some points, I couldn't calm her down. So after giving them ultimatum, if you don't want to tell where you are, if you want to be that kind of a person, I don't know the person. We're gonna have to go our separate ways. Well, the thing is, be careful what you wish for.
Oh.
I got a divorce from it.
Oh.
And it's more like 28 years of marriage.
Oh,
so,
wow.
You were trying to do something that you don't really mean. You're trying to bring order.
Mm.
That the person made a choice. For me, it's almost like things happen. It's like in the Bible, it tells you that everything works out for your own good. It was almost like the only thing that made me become aware of who Christ is.
Mm.
After all these years, I thought I was doing everything by myself.
Mm.
It got you to a place where it became a point in your life where you actually learned a lesson about life. You become a better person from that moment. You learned so much from it. You know? As much as negative it might be, you have to lose something that's important to you where you actually make sense out of life to be able to move forward.
Mm.
And this person had that personality. And that's what I love about the person. So I'm not worried about you trying to mess with her on the street or another woman coming to, push her around. It was a good trait that the person had.
Mm.
It was outside of the home strength.
Oh.
So when over time the person started to kind of feel like they can do it at home, so again you're trying to balance things out, but you don't really have control over anybody unless they want you to have the control. It was a growth, less a point where either you become a better person or learn a lesson how to be better, or even go down from there. We have the best relationship afterwards. There were no lawyers involved. It was peaceful. You know? So we talked about this today. There's a lot of what we've been discussing these last 2 weeks. That it's almost like you needed someone to take. I mean, you are aware of it, but not really aware of it, even though you think you're aware of it.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah.
You have boundaries. It applies to your children. Some of the things that you allow your children to do, they're pretty much pushing you to have a boundary.
Mm.
When you set a boundary, you see tremendous change because they're actually hoping that you do it. If you don't do it, then they just keep doing what they're doing.
Right.
One of my friends.
Right.
So I had to counsel them and let them know how to save them from themselves because these are things that we do without thinking about it. You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah. So
that's why when you mentioned that, I put my hands up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wow. So,
It's part of the whole thing for me. It doesn't matter where I am. I can tell you the whole story.
mm.
I'm not ashamed of, something that you did in the past. Did you learn something from it?
Right. Right.
It's an incredible experience. Negative or not, but you can turn something negative to positive.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you mentioned two things about the kids. If you don't, consequences, because we haven't talked about it. So you're saying if you don't do the consequences, then they won't do it. But then you talked about they won't respect you, and they you know, if you have consequences and they violate the boundary and you don't execute the consequence, they won't. But there's the other side is if you have a consequence like the situation with your marriage,
Yes.
so you don't propose a consequence that you aren't willing to go through with.
Exactly. That
So
was a lesson from it. You remember you were talking about you have to mean what you said.
Yeah.
It has to be something
You have
you're
to-
not trying to do just to play games or to
Yeah, to
try
manipulate.
to control, manipulate the situation. So
Yeah.
in that case, it was the tool was intended to bring some goodness. It wasn't what you expected to happen, from it. So it wasn't, sometimes you're doing something to do harm, or sometimes you're just trying to, almost like telling somebody, someone asking you for money on the street. You have your wallet, you say, well, I don't have any change. Of course you have change. You don't want to give it to them. Sometimes they don't ask you, you get it out and give it to them. So sometimes it's just about trying to get it, just trying to avoid conflict or trying to avoid hurting somebody's feelings that will do some things that we do.
Yeah.
So, but it's a lesson every time. So.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that? All right. So the next boundary, sort of an internal boundary that you may have to disengage from a discussion or disengage and cool down before you respond to something. So don't, if you may, knowing yourself that you might, if you're in the heat of the moment, that you're going to say something you didn't mean or do something you didn't want to do, then disengaging for a minute. And, you can communicate, but not just, walking away, but communicate. I'm getting really irritated right now. I need to step back, or this isn't going to be helpful. This conversation isn't going to be helpful. So communicating that you may have a boundary that you need to disengage. All right. The next boundary is non-Christian relationships. Who has 2 Corinthians 6:14?
I have that one, Mike. Let me get over it to the screen. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness?
All right. So don't be unevenly yoked. Don't be yoked with unbelievers. So that's romantic, family, friendships. So that's not saying, you shouldn't associate with non-believers. You shouldn't have friends that are non-believers. Obviously you can't change your family. You have family that are non-believers. It's not saying that don't ever hang around them, but romantic relationships, close relationships. So you have the world and you have the church. Jesus said, "Who is my mother? Who's my brother? These are my brothers. These are my brother. Those who are following him." And so we want to if you have deep relationships, you want that to be with Christians, the deep relationships that you have. And let me have a video for that, which will be in audio today, unfortunately. But it's a guy with an axe and a piece of wood. He's holding an axe and a piece of wood. Oh, oops.
This should be able to slice me wide open.
Oh, wait.
But
let me do that again.
But the thing about this iron is it has become dull. This should be able to slice me wide open. But the only reason that it's not slicing me open is because it's been hitting against wood. So if iron sharpens iron, what doesn't sharpen iron? Wood. If iron and wood are constantly in relationship, this can never be sharpened because it's not made from the same material. If I'm in a relationship with somebody, something, some venture that is not equally yoked, what happens is one will become damaged and the other will become dull. See, many of us are in relationships that are unequally yoked, and it's hurting both of you because you started off sharp, but you started having relationship with wood. People that don't have the same value, and what happens is the thing that was sharp becomes dull, and the thing that was wood becomes damaged.
The thing that was sharp becomes dull, and the thing that was wood becomes damaged. So when you're in a relationship with unequally yoked. Any thoughts on that? No? Okay.
I'll say something.
Okay.
I think that when, let's say, well, you're a believer and your friends are unbelievers and you're hanging out with them all the time and all they want to do is go to the club and listen to secular music, and you see that they're doing things and they keep egging you on to do it, and eventually you may fold. So it'll cause you to fall, is what happens, I think. And you won't have your Christian friends to keep you in check. Your body of believers, your fellowship, your group, your church. So, yeah, it will eventually cause you to fall and you will be dull.
Yeah. Yeah. And so.
Because I think the other thing, too, is you probably won't be in the Word as much anymore either. And when you fall away from the Word, God's Word, then that's when you start thinking in the world. Wait, what is it? To be
of the world, but not in
the
it?
world. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you knew what I meant.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, you are. Yeah. So Jesus, they criticize Jesus because he hung with unbelievers. So it's not saying you can't have association with unbelievers, but his inner circle were, he had the 3 and he had the 12 were his inner circle. He didn't necessarily exclude himself from associating with them as being unclean, as the Pharisees did. But he also, his inner circle, these are my brothers, these are my mother, these are my brothers. Those who believed as he did. All right. The next boundary is emotional. You should have emotional boundaries. So you should know how you feel about something. You should know how you feel about something. You should know how you feel in general. And 2 people in a relationship are going to have 2 different emotional experiences. You're going to have 2 different emotional experiences. So this is similar to what we talked about. So you shouldn't tell someone, oh, no, you weren't sad when that happened. Oh, no, you shouldn't be mad. You shouldn't be mad at that. Your emotional experience is not the same. So you need to accept how the other person feels. They can feel different than you feel. Accept that someone else can feel different than you feel about something. Don't expect that they have to feel the same way. Or if you were in that situation, you would have felt this way, so you think they should feel this way. They should be mad at that. The person who cut them off, they aren't. that, or they should be mad at what this person said. If they aren't, so you shouldn't expect that someone else needs to feel the same way you feel about something. You're having two different emotional experiences. And so boundary is that your emotions are separate from the other person's emotions. You're having two different emotional experiences. And so what this healthy looks like healthy and unhealthy. Healthy, you're responsible for your own happiness, we talked about. You have emotional awareness and emotional intelligence. So you may say, I'm feeling anxious, and so I'm feeling anxious right now, and so this is what I need to do to address it. And you have compassion for yourself and others. That's what it looks like healthy. Unhealthy is you're always placing your partner's happiness above yours. So we want to make the other person happy, but it should be reciprocal. It should be reciprocal, and it should, but also, another unhealthy is that you always believe you're wrong. So you're always, wondering, oh man, I sent the text. Did I say the wrong thing? Oh, did I do the wrong thing? Did I say the wrong thing? What you did what you felt. You said what you felt, but your partner is the one that's going to tell you whether it was right or wrong. That's unhealthy. And it's unhealthy also to believe that the other person always has to feel the same way you do. So you have a friend. Oh, I don't like so and so. Now you think, oh, your friend shouldn't like so and so, so you believe that the other person always has to feel the way you feel. That's not healthy. Then there's empathy. Or any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on that? Okay. So there's empathy. So you can empathize with how someone feels without feeling it yourself. So empathy, so you should be able to pick up on how someone else feels, but you don't have to feel it yourself. But then also, like we saw last year, a lot of with all the politics and the masks and the vaccine and everyone is like, oh, I can't believe how this person can be so stupid. I can't believe how they can believe that, or I can't believe how this person can see this, so not being able to see something from another person's perspective is not a healthy thing. And like you can only see things from your perspective. You can only see things from your perspective, not having empathy for other people. So you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree with someone to be able to understand their point of view. You can disagree with someone, but still respect and understand their point of view. So we're all living different life experiences, and so we've all had different. So whatever someone believes is because whatever they've been through in life, that seemed like a logical decision to them. And so whatever they've been through and whatever they've dealt with, that seemed like a rational conclusion. But whereas what you went through and what you dealt with, that seems foolish. and you how can someone be so stupid to think that? But so it's healthy to be able to empathize with someone, to be able to understand where they're coming from, to understand someone else's point of view. You don't necessarily have to agree with them. It doesn't necessarily have to change your opinion. But it's good to be able to have insight, emotional intelligence, and other to understand how someone else feels and recognize how someone else feels. So another emotional boundary is requiring justification. So you feel like you have to justify everything. You have to justify how you feel. You have to justify how you feel. You need evidence. So prove that you were mad. Prove that you were sad. Feel like you need evidence for your feelings. Being made to feel like you have to prove how you feel is a boundary violation. Another emotional boundary violation is we talked about last week is emotional dumping. You know, so some people want to dump all of their emotional issues onto you. They don't respect your boundaries. They want to dump, and they feel like any time of the day that they should be able to dump their emotional issues onto you without any concern with where you're at emotionally. Where your emotion, you may not be in a situation to handle it. And it may be something that triggers you, not having any respect for the fact that it may trigger you. They're just dumping their emotional issues onto you without any respect to your boundaries, trying to understand your boundaries or understand you, and just always just dumping onto you. Like someone may be complaining about how, oh, my mother just always wants me to call her, always wants me to hang out with her, and you're just complaining, but you forgot about the fact that this person's mother died yesterday, and they wish that their mother was there doing that for them. So it's like you have no respect for the other person's. You're like, yeah, you may be going through something, but you can't expect that to always be able to dump your emotions onto someone, especially if you don't know them. And so we talked about last week, someone gave the example of a hiking partner. And so it should be reciprocal as well. It shouldn't be one person always dumping on the other person. It should be reciprocal. It shouldn't be always about me. I should be concerned about you as well. It shouldn't be about every time I see you, I'm gonna dump on you. This is what happened at work. This is what happened with, my boyfriend, girlfriend. This is what happened. It's all about me dumping my issues on you. It should be reciprocal. It should be reciprocal. And another thing about emotional dumping, but it also, someone shouldn't be demanding that you emotionally dump on them and tell them all of your issues. So someone shouldn't be demanding that, you should open up to me. You should tell me, and they want to know all your deep, dark secrets, and you're standing in line behind them at the coffee shop and they want you to tell them, your whole life story, and they're trying to pull everything out of you. And so that's not healthy. And that you need to have a boundary around that as well. You need to have a boundary around what you share and when you share it in terms of building up trust. Because there's some people, like narcissists, they use that for manipulation. They try to get all the information about you up front. And then later on in the relationship, they can use it to shame you, to make you feel insecure. They can use it to manipulate you. They can use it if you break up, they'll use it to smear your reputation. Or they'll use it for blame passing. So they say, oh, no, you're just suspicious of me cheating because your ex-boyfriend cheated on your sister. So they're trying to get all the information, and they'll try to use it to justify their behavior, blame passing. And it's like common tactics that narcissists use, or they want to play on your insecurities with it. So they want to get all the information about you up front to use it against you. So you want to have boundaries to protect against that and be wise as serpents. Any thoughts on emotional boundaries? Anybody experienced any of those? Going once. Going by. All right. Let's see, 8:35. All right. So next we have possessions. You want to have boundaries around your possessions. So you determine, what items you lend out to people. Maybe your friends, or what items you lend out and what condition they can be returned. So boundaries around your possessions. one example, would be, what things are yours to share and what things aren't. You have boundaries around that. You can decide that. You can set the boundaries around that. Then there's privacy and secrecy. So there's some things. What are your things? Your diary, your computer, your phone, your social media accounts, your email, locked drawers, your bank accounts. A boundary around what's private and what's not. And so this will be different depending on your relationship. What's private between a husband and a wife, you'll have maybe less privacy than someone that's not a husband and a wife. And it's your boundary to set, especially if you're not married. It's your boundary to set. So if someone is insistent on you not having privacy, then what do you think that's communicating in the relationship? If someone insists, let's see, do you think that someone should be able to demand the other person's password for their cell phone? That's not rhetorical. Do you think that someone should be able to demand the other person's cell phone password?
No.
No? Okay.
Maybe not demand, but ask for it. If it's being demanded, then something is not right. People, most relationships, they trust each other. They will let you answer your phone when somebody calls. So if you have to be in a relationship with someone and you want to go answer your phone in the bathroom, something is wrong. So they don't have to demand the password. You can actually tell them what it is, or you don't even have a password in it. It goes a long way. You really need the trust. You just don't say the word trust. Actually prove it.
Actually, what?
You actually try to practice it.
Okay.
So
right.
you don't have a password on your phone. You have two phones. I have one phone. I mean, if my friends call me, my wife can pick up my phone. I mean, she will not ask you for any password. So anytime you have to start using a password, it kind of raises suspicion and lack of trust. So you don't demand it, you ask for it.
I guess if there's like you need to use the phone or something, or if you want to check the phone, and so if someone demands it, what does that communicate about the relationship?
Lack of trust.
Lack of trust, yeah. And
because
so
they shouldn't be demanding it. That password is there for a reason. It might be for a different reason than what most people might think. When you get that kind of impression that you're hiding the password, or your phone rings, even if you don't have a password, your phone rings, you want to excuse yourself and go to the restroom or go somewhere else. It looks pretty bad. So the person will suspect you even when there's no reason to suspect. So that's why I use the term instead of demanding for it. Demand implies some kind of a problem is going on, or lack of trust. They can ask you for your password, you tell them. As long as they give you their own password. It can be one-sided.
What if they say no?
If they say no, then there's a problem with the relationship. That's why people have to find out what's going on. Because at some point when you find out who you really are, you don't have to marry someone, you don't have to be in a relationship. It doesn't have to be. So if you don't trust that person enough to share your life with them, something is wrong. They say no, that tells you that they're hiding something from you. And whatever they're hiding from you, not something you can imagine all kinds of things. So when they say no, that's a sign that something is wrong. Then the relationship have the breakdown.
What
You have to be hiding something.
what if they say no to their ATM card and passcode, and you're not married?
Oh my God. When you get married, you know that you don't have anything.
No, I said when you're not married. When you're not married.
Huh?
No, I'm saying if you're not married.
No, if you're not married, I mean, there's a whole different.
No.
I'm telling you is about marriage.
Oh,
People that
okay,
are married.
okay,
Yeah.
right.
I'm not
Okay.
talking about people dating. That's a whole different world.
Yeah. Okay.
That's mistrust and lies, deceit.
Yeah.
In a relationship, committed relationship, I mean, you can be looking for your ATM card in the morning. Your wife already left for work, took your ATM card. I mean, what are you going to do? It's our money.
Yeah.
So it's different.
Right.
Relationship.
Yeah. It's different. It's different. Marriage relationship versus not marriage relationship. When you're married, you're one. You're one. When you're not married, you have boundaries that you should be able to set on privacy.
Exactly.
And so sometimes though, so if you're not married and someone's demanding something like your cell phone or something, it either means, so it could be one, sometimes you'll see that in the situation where that person, actually somebody I was, last week I was talking to about this, and they were saying that they had a boyfriend that would always ask for their password and search through their phone, and they said, well, one time they asked for his, and he gave it to him in front of him, and then she saw some communication with his ex-girlfriend that made her break up. So if someone is demanding something, then so it could mean that they're untrustworthy.
Yes.
If they're cheating, they're gonna. But the other thing it could mean is that they've been cheated on, so that they've been in a situation. So if you catch somebody doing something wrong, then the boundaries change. So like if you catch someone cheating somehow, whether it's some improper communication or whatever it is. So if you catch someone cheating and you forgive them, in order to restore trust, boundaries may have to change. So they may not have as much privacy as they did in order to restore the trust.
Yeah,
So
not when you enter the password.
Yeah, so
They have to give it to you.
so now you should be able to demand a password if they've broken your trust. So even though you forgive them,
Yeah.
trust isn't necessarily restored.
No.
But the problem happens is now you go into your next relationship and you're trying to bring in the boundaries from this other relationship. Because you're bringing in baggage from your previous relationship. You've had your trust violated, and now you're wounded. You're bringing in your baggage to this current situation. Say, oh, I can't trust you because you won't give me this. You must be hiding something. It was like, no, the issue isn't them. The issue is you. The issue is you were hurt before, and now you're bringing in the old boundaries into this new relationship. And that this person shouldn't suffer from what the other person did.
That's where therapy comes in. You have to go through therapy. You have to walk it out. It's not something you just wake up one morning and then you don't trust somebody yesterday, today you trust them.
Right.
It's a lot of time. Even when they're not doing something, you're always on your guard.
Yeah.
You've been there before. So it's something that you have to trust. When you have to demand for something from someone, don't trust them. It's like asking your child, have you done your homework? They say yes, and then the next day you get a note from the school or an email. Your child haven't done their homework for the whole week. I mean, when they come back the next time, I'm not going to tell them to go to your room and do it. They will bring something, they will get their homework, sit next to you, and you'll be looking at it, doing it,
right,
because you don't trust them.
Right.
You have to find it. The next day they will do the same thing, turn it in. You still have the fear that they might, reverse back to who they were. So that moment, things are different.
Right.
It will take a lot of time. So in a relationship, once you experience something negative, no matter who it is, you have to confront it. For time, it takes time. And after you've done the time, you have no more reason to doubt the person, then you can just move on. It takes a lot of work to trust.
Yeah.
So when they ask for your password or they demand for it, you hand it to them. So it would resolve any suspicion. You can go on your phone. You don't have anything to hide anyway. You also showing them that you have empathy for what they're going through. They're in trouble. They're not happy to be treating you that way, but when they see that you show some kind of understanding, it will make it easy for them to let go.
Right.
You just move forward from there. Yeah.
Right. But I guess, yeah, so then it also goes into, should you have to prove that you're trustworthy if you haven't given any reason to think otherwise? Should you have to prove, should you have to pass a test if you haven't given any reason to believe you're untrustworthy?
As long as the person you're dealing with is someone new, as long as you understand that this is a baggage that they're struggling with, you should be able to do it because you want to be with them. You don't have to be with them. You know that this is someone you care about. You also understand what they're going through or what they've been.
Right.
Maybe they were kicked out of their house. There's 5 kids. The wife, in the court, they can't see their kids. They're going through trauma. So when you see them and want to be with them, they will assume that you are the person that this falls into them. You have to be patient if you really want to be with them. Once they see that you care about how they feel or you understand them, they will let you in. It's just a process. You can't force your way through it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you're not the kind of person that will tolerate or deal with those kind of things, it's not the person for you.
Right.
So for someone that has never been hurt, and sometimes the person that has been hurt will be the best person you ever met in your life. You just have to go through the process with it. That's all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Having compassion for the other person's pain, respond to their pain. Yeah, that's one. I don't remember who I was talking to, but I was talking to one married guy about this, about having the password to the phone.
Michael, you're frozen. You may want to wait a few seconds.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit better. You were frozen for a little bit.
Oh, it says unstable. Okay. Thank you. All right. Yeah, I was asking one married guy about this. I can't remember who it was though. About having the wife having the password to the phone. He said, my wife having the password. He said, man, it's worse than that. He said, my kids have my password. He said, but I didn't give it to them. He said, my kids they said, let me see your phone, and they open it up. He said, they have my wife's password. He said, I don't care what my wife sees. He said, I'm concerned with my kids seeing my password. Seeing my phone, because sometimes I may send a message to my wife that they shouldn't see. But he's like, I don't care about my wife seeing my phone. I don't want my kids seeing my phone. But yeah, so they had a complete trust with that was good. Good night, Henry. Good night, Henry. Yeah, good to have you. And all right, so we will leave it with that. And with trust and baggage. Any other thoughts on this topic? I know somebody's got some thoughts on this.
Sure, Michael, I do. I really like the narcissistic topic of dealing with somebody just as of yesterday, and it's a family member. And they've been this way, and I was trying to set boundaries with them yesterday, by being selective of things I want to share, things I don't want to share, and it turned into me being a guarded person. That's what they perceive me as, and boundaries can also be misunderstood, but without people really having some sort of commonality around it. And it seems like with me and my family, boundaries are just so hard to keep in place, and they become very offended. But I've seen it also occur with friends. So is something that I feel like I've been having to walk around on eggshells with because I don't want to end the relationship. And I don't want to be, like you were saying earlier, the people pleaser, the one that's giving in and just doing things and not sticking to my boundaries, you know? But being in tough situations where I feel like it can, you know, cause some friction in the relationship, I felt like, you know, let me tread lightly on this. Like, let me just be very careful and make sure that, I think what you were saying earlier about not compromising your boundaries to fit someone else's needs, you know, or because you have your feelings, they have their feelings, you have their needs, you have your needs and they have their needs as well. But I think at the end of the day, what I got out of today's lesson was setting healthy boundaries and being very confident in them, right? But also being cautious of, you know, I think you call it consequences behind them as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's good. And so some people may misunderstand, but some people may also act like they misunderstand. They may say, "Oh, you're just guarded," or "Oh, you're just being selfish," or "Oh, you're just so." But they actually know that they actually understand that you should, but it's not in their best interest. So they're not just going to say, "Oh yeah, that's really smart for you to do because I'm going to take advantage of you." I mean, you can't expect that they're going to agree with. So they may act like they don't understand, or they may say things that you shouldn't do it. Oh, you don't trust. You're not a trusting person, or you know. So they may do it intentionally.
Yeah, Michael's frozen at this point.
Oh.
It's okay. We'll ask him to recap that in a few.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Can you repeat that, Michael?
You're back.
We lost
Okay.
you for about 30 seconds.
Okay. I was saying that some people may pretend that they don't understand. They may say, "Oh, you don't trust me," or "Oh, you're just a guarded person." They may act like they don't understand why you're setting boundaries because it's not in their best interest for you to set the boundary. So you can't expect them to say, "Hey, that's a really good idea because I was about to manipulate you." You know, you can't expect you can't expect that the other person is going to agree with your boundary. They're going to say something to make you feel guilty for setting the boundary. You know, especially if they know that that's the right thing to do. Because for some people, you know, narcissists, I probably shouldn't keep saying that without, because I'm not fully explaining what that means. Like that's a kryptonite to them. Boundaries are kryptonite for narcissists. You know that the manipulation, they can't manipulate you if you have strong boundaries, and so they're going to do whatever they can to get you to take them away. They're going to make you feel guilty. They're going to make you feel like a bad person. They're going to make you feel like you're not a good Christian. They're going to say whatever they need to say, because they know what buttons to push in you to make you feel bad for setting boundaries. And so you can't expect that the other person is going to agree with you setting the boundaries.
Amen.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
No problem. All right. So let's see. So it's time to pray out. So Mr. Peter, would you like to do us the honors?
Yeah, you bet, Mike. Let's go from there. Father, thank you so much that we get a chance to learn about your word, to learn about different tips, as well as growth. Father, we thank you for every single moment that we have called life. And we ask that you continue to fill us with your understanding. Regardless of what boundary that we set or whatever set before us, Lord, we pray that it's always in your will. If it's not, it's a major offense to you. So, Father, we pray that things we set be according to what you have in heart for the benefit of not just the other person, as well as the recipient themselves. Father, we pray that you continue to work things in our lives, that you may be glorified in every step and every action that we make and decide. Father, we pray that every single moment that we have, that we're alive, Lord, that the decisions that we make we need to be able to differentiate between separations of sacrificing versus boundary for selfishness, versus boundaries for safety, versus boundary, Father, so that we can be able to accomplish your work. And so, Lord, we ask that you give us that wisdom and that understanding so that we do not selfishly take the advantage and become that person that you don't want us to be. Father, any type of pride that we have, that stubbornness, that narcissistic type of personality, that obstacle that you want to change in us, Father, we ask that you continue to change that so that we can be able to glorify you at the end of the day. But not only just the end of the day, but actually at the end of our lives, and every single thing that we do, every single decision that we make. We pray that we continue to glorify you in our words, in our thoughts, and our actions. That we don't make another person fall, but actually enhance them, to grow with them, to build quality into them, just the way Jesus did for us, very unselfishly. So we pray for that unselfish heart that your Son has, that's carved into us. So, Father, as we rest tonight, we thank you very much for Michael's understanding, for spending so much hours to build that quality and to give us testimony, and as well as stories and even scripture, Father, that hopefully we can apply into our lives, that you always come first. Help us to focus on you much more than anything else. Help Michael to apply the works that he's put into, so that he can share with us some of the pros and cons and things that didn't work out, the things that did work out, that we never see as failure, but we see it as a growth in our lives. Father, we thank you so much for this evening. We pray that we have a good night's rest, and tomorrow as we continue to build others up and to serve you in such a way that you can always smile upon us. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you, Peter.
Hey, thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
You put a lot of time into it. Thank you so much for
Oh,
your
yeah.
evening.
Thank you. Well, Moses, did you have any comments? Good to see you.
No, thank you for having me. Yeah, I like the study. I will join next time as well.
Okay. All right. So look forward to seeing you. It's every 2 weeks. And in the email that you'll start receiving, there'll be a link to previous. This is the third lesson on boundaries, and we've been on Seeking Wholeness for about a year if you want to see more of that. But
Okay.
if not, you'll be caught up enough from the preview of the lesson. All right, good to have you there. So any other thoughts before we say goodnight?
I had one more thought.
Okay.
One more thought, now that I'm in my car and Henry's by himself, that just came to me, which is something I say a lot, is garbage in, garbage out. So if we stay in the Word, if we stay around people that are in the Word, then that's what's going to come out of us. If we're around garbage, if we're constantly hearing garbage, listening to garbage, seeing garbage, that's what's going to come out of us. So, yeah, garbage in, garbage out.
You also become like the people that you hang around.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Your closest friends, if they can identify your closest friends, then they can tell you what you're doing.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah.
That's amazing. You know, amazing.
Yeah.